Legendary Passages, Episode 60, The Daughters of Thebes. Semele, Agave, Antiope, and Niobe, from the Library of Apollodorus. Last time, we reviewed the many fables of love concerning Thebes. This time, we cover the myths of Dionysus, Cadmus and Harmonia, and Zethus and Amphion. Cadmus and Harmonia had a son Polydorus, and 4 daughters, Agave, Autonoe, and Semele. Now Zeus loved Semele, and was tricked into killing her while she was pregnant with Dionysus, but Zeus saved him. Dionysus was raised as a girl by his aunt Ino and her husband Athamas. Hera drove them all mad, and after Ino jumped off a cliff, she became the sea goddess Leucothea. Family tragedy was commonplace, for Autonoe and Aristaeus had a son named Acteon, who was killed by his own hounds. Dionysus wandered near and far, spreading madness in his wake, eventually returning to Thebes. There ruled his cousin Pentheus, who was savagely killed by his mother Agave in a fit of madness. After wreaking havoc on land and sea, Dionysus achieved godhood and rescued his mother Semele from Hades, and she became the goddess Thyone. Cadmus and Harmonia were transformed into serpents, and their son Polydorus married Nyctis, daughter of Nycteus, and they had a son Labdacus, father of Laius. When Polydorus and Labdacus were dead, and Laius was but an infant, Nycteus ruled as king. Now Nycteus had another daughter named Antiope, whom Zeus had gotten with child, and she ran off and married another without his blessing. Heartbroken, Nycteus died, charging his brother with the throne and demanding he punish Antiope. Lycus killed her husband, exposed her twin sons, and threw her into a dungeon. Antiope's sons survived, and Zethus became a cowboy, and Amphion became a bard. They killed Lycus and his wife Dirce, and ruled as kings. Zethus married Thebe, and Amphion married Niobe. Foolishly, Niobe boasted of their 12 children, and all died save 1 or 2. Overcome with grief, Niobe was changed into a weeping stone. Next time, we return to Laius and Oedipus, and Thebes' mythic history. The Daughters of Thebes, a legendary passage, from the Library of Apollodorus, translated by J. G. Fraser. And to Cadmus were born daughters, Autonoe, Ino, Semele, Agave, and a son, Polydorus. Ino was married to Athamas, Autonoe to Aristaeus, and Agave to Acteon. But Zeus loved Semele, and bedded with her unknown to Hera. Now Zeus had agreed to do for her whatever she asked, and deceived by Hera, she asked that he would come to her as he came when he was wooing Hera. Unable to refuse, Zeus came to her bridal chamber in a chariot with lightnings and thunderings, and launched a thunderbolt. But Semele expired of fright, and Zeus, snatching the 6th-month aborted child from the fire, sewed it into his thigh. On the death of Semele, the other daughters of Cadmus spread a report that Semele had bedded with a mortal man, and had falsely accused Zeus, and that therefore she had been blasted by thunder. But at the proper time, Zeus undid the stitches, and gave birth to Dionysus, and entrusted him to Hermes. And he conveyed him to Ino and Athamas, and persuaded them to rear him as a girl. But Hera indignantly drove them mad, and Athamas hunted his elder son Lurchus as a deer, and killed him. And Ino threw Melicertes into a boiling cauldron, and carrying it with the dead child, she sprang into the deep. And she herself is called Leucothea, and the boy is called Peleimon, such being the names they get from sailors, for they succour storm-tossed mariners. And the Isthmian Games were instituted by Sisyphus in honor of Melicertes. But Zeus eluded the wrath of Hera by turning Dionysus into a kid, and Hermes took him and brought him to the nymphs who dwelt at Nysa in Asia, whom Zeus afterwards changed into stars and named them the Hyades. Autonoe and Aristaeus had a son Acteon, who was bred by Chiron to be a hunter, and then afterwards was devoured on Cithaeron by his own dogs. He perished in that way, according to Acusilaus, because Zeus was angry at him for wooing Semele. But, according to the more general opinion, it was because he saw Artemis bathing. And they say that the goddess at once transformed him into a deer, and drove mad the 50 dogs in his pack, which devoured him unwittingly. Acteon being gone, the dogs sought their master, howling lamentably, and in this search they came to the cave of Chiron, who fashioned an image of Acteon, which soothed their grief. Here the text is corrupt. Dionysus discovered the vine, and being driven mad by Hera, he roamed about Egypt and Syria. At first he was received by Proteus, king of Egypt, but afterwards he arrived at Cybele in Phrygia. And there, after he had been purified by Rhea and learned the rites of initiation, he received from her the costume and hastened through Thrace against the Indians. But Lycurgus, son of Dryas, was king of the Edonians, who dwell beside the river Stramon, and he was the first who insulted and expelled him. Dionysus took refuge in the sea with Thetis, daughter of Nereus, and the Bacchanals were taken prisoner together with the multitude of satyrs that attended him. But afterwards the Bacchanals were suddenly released, and Dionysus drove Lycurgus mad. And in his madness he struck his son Dryas dead with an axe, imagining that he was lopping a branch of a vine, and when he had cut off his son's extremities, he recovered his senses. The land remaining barren, the god declared, oracularly, that it would bear fruit if Lycurgus were put to death. On hearing that, the Edonians led him to Mount Pangaeum and bound him, and there, by the will of Dionysus, he died, destroyed by horses. Having traversed Thrace and the whole of India, and set up pillars there, he came to Thebes, and forced the women to abandon their houses, and rave in Bacchic frenzy on Cithaeron. But Pentheus, whom Agave bore to Acteon, succeeded Cadmus in the kingdom, and he attempted to put a stop to these proceedings. And coming to Cithaeron to spy on the Bacchanals, he was torn limb from limb by his mother Agave in a fit of madness, for she thought he was a wild beast. And having shown the Thebans that he was a god, Dionysus came to Argos, and there again, because they did not honor him, he drove the women mad, and they on the mountains devoured the flesh of the infants whom they carried at their breasts. And wishing to be ferried across from Icaria to Naxos, he hired a pirate ship of Tyrrhenians. But when they had put him on board, they sailed past Naxos and made for Asia, intending to sell him. Howbeit, he turned the mast and the oars into snakes, and filled the vessel with ivy and the sound of flutes, and the pirates went mad and leapt into the sea, and were turned into dolphins. Thus men perceived that he was a god, and honored him, and having brought up his mother from Hades, and named her Thyone, he ascended with her to heaven. But Cadmus and Harmonia quitted Thebes, and went to the Achaeans. As the Achaeans were being attacked by the Illyrians, the god declared by an oracle that they would get the better of the Illyrians if they had Cadmus and Harmonia as their leaders. They believed him, and made them their leaders against the Illyrians, and got the better of them. And Cadmus reigned over the Illyrians, and a son Illyrius was born to him. But afterwards he was, along with Harmonia, turned into a serpent, and sent away by Zeus to the Elysian fields. Polydorus, having become king of Thebes, married Nyctis, daughter of Nyctius, son of Sithonius, and begat Labdacus, who perished after Pentheus because he was like-minded with him. But Labdacus, having left a year-old son, Laius, the government was usurped by Lycus, brother of Nyctius, so long as Laius was a child. Both of them had fled from Euboea, because they had killed Phlegius, son of Ares, and Dotus, the Boeotian, and they took up their abode at Hieria, and thence having come to Thebes, were enrolled as citizens through their friendship with Pentheus. So after being chosen commander-in-chief by the Thebans, Lycus compassed the supreme power and reigned for 20 years, but was murdered by Zethus and Amphion for the following reason. Antiope was a daughter of Nyctius, and Zeus had intercourse with her. When she was with child, and her father threatened her, she ran away to Apollodorus at Sicyon, and was married to him. In a fit of despondency, Nyctius killed himself, after charging Lycus to punish Apollodorus and Antiope. Lycus marched against Sicyon, subdued it, slew Apollodorus, and led Antiope away captive. On the way she gave birth to 2 sons at Eleutherae in Boeotia. The infants were exposed, but a neatherd found and reared them, and he called the one Zethus, and the other Amphion. Now Zethus paid attention to cattle breeding, but Amphion practiced minstrelsy, for Hermes had given him a lyre. But Lycus and his wife Dirce imprisoned Antiope, and treated her despitefully. Howbeit, one day her bonds were loosened of themselves, and unknown to her keepers, she came to her son's cottage, begging that they would take her in. They recognized their mother, and slew Lycus, but Dirce they tied to a bull, and flung her dead body into the spring that is called Dirce after her. And having succeeded to the sovereignty, they fortified the city, the stones following Amphion's lyre, and they expelled Laius. He resided in Peloponnese, being hospitably received by Pelops, and while he taught Chrysippus, the son of Pelops, to drive a chariot, he conceived a passion for the lad, and carried him off. Zethus married Thebe, after whom the city of Thebes is named, and Amphion married Niobe, daughter of Tantalus, who bore 7 sons, Cyplus, Eupinatus, Ismenus, Damascathon, Agenor, Phaedamus, Tantalus, and the same number of daughters, Ethodia, or as some say, Neaera, Cleodoxa, Estoiche, Phthia, Pelopia, Astocratia, and Ogygia. But Hesiod says that they had 10 sons and 10 daughters. Herodorus, that they had 2 male children and 3 female, and Homer, that they had 6 sons and 6 daughters. Being blessed with children, Niobe said that she was more blessed with children than Latona. Stung by the taunt, Latona incited Artemis and Apollo against them, and Artemis shot down the females in the house, and Apollo killed all the males, together as they were hunting on Cithaeron. Of the males, Amphion alone was saved, and of the females, Chloris the elder, whom Neleus married. But according to Telesia, there were saved Amyclus and Meliboea, and Amphion also was shot by them. But Niobe herself quitted Thebes, and went to her father Tantalus at Cyplus, and there, on praying to Zeus, she was transformed into a stone, and tears flow night and day from the stone.